I would like to welcome all of you to Recon 360, a project by the Interact Club of St. Thomas College, Mount Lavinia, alongside the Entertainment and Media Appreciation Club of, also known as EMAC, of the Royal Institute in Colombo. The aim of this project is basically to connect prospective international students with current international students to make sure that current students, or rather prospective students, know what they're getting into when going into another country to study. So what we're looking at for this project is basically what is the lifestyle like in those countries, how would you balance your work life, and what kind of systems can you tap into in order to succeed in those nations. How this will work is I will ask a series of questions which were asked before, and which some of the people in the audience were able to ask their questions through those Google forms that we sent out a couple of days ago. Also, there have been some preset questions from the committee, but please feel free to drop any questions you may have in the chat, and depending on the validity and depending on the time, we will be able to ask the speakers today or their opinions on the questions that you put forward to us. Before anything else, let's start off right away. I would first like to introduce our first speaker for the evening, Mr. Januka Pereira, who was a former student of St. Thomas's College, Mount Lavinia. He was the secretary of the Interact Club back in 2018-2019. While his time in school, he has been the recipient of many academic achievements and is now currently studying mechatronic engineering at the University of Sydney in Australia. A very good evening to you, Januka.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Your video is getting a bit stuck. Okay, no, it's fine now. It's fine now.
Hi,
so Januka, let me just get the generic first question out of the way. Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right, so my name is Januka. I did further maths for my A-levels, and currently I am doing a degree in mechatronics engineering, and I'm in my second year.
Yeah, cool. So what made you choose, what distinguishes Australia from really the other places? What made you choose Australia to study mechatronic engineering?
So when I was looking for universities, I looked for I was choosing the course that I was looking for, and mechatronics was one that I had higher priority for. And Australia was one of the countries that offered that course. So other than that, countries like Malaysia and Singapore also offered the course, but based on the rankings of the universities, I chose my university in Australia.
Right. Can you walk us through the various differences in the education system? Because of course, the way Australia and the University of Sydney teaches is very different to the Sri Lankan conception of teaching. So what are some of the adjustments prospective students will have to make once they get to Australia?
Right, so this is not specific to Australia, but for university in general, the input that the lecturers give is very little. So you need to do a lot of research for your assignments and exams. Like the questions you get, they are never direct. So you need to do a lot of research, and there is a lot of expectation that you do work on your own. And it's not really spoon-fed like education in Sri Lanka.
Right. So when you get there, are there any specific resources that helps you in terms of your getting through the regular academic year?
Yes, so a lot of proprietary software are given to us for free. And for example, for engineering, I use software like MATLAB and SolidWorks, which are very expensive and not available in some universities. But my university does provide them. And the library also provides a lot of access to a wide range of research articles, which really helps when you are doing your work.
All right. Let's talk a bit about like adjusting to life in Australia, because I know Australia does have the highest concentration of Sri Lankans outside of Sri Lanka. So how is it should someone getting to Australia really try to connect with the Sri Lankan diaspora, or should they maybe try to be a little more independent? What are your thoughts on this?
So the place I'm in, Sydney, the Sri Lankan community is not that much. If you go to Victoria, which is where Melbourne is in, there is a bigger Sri Lankan community. And even in my university, there is a Sri Lankan society.
Right.
So there are a lot of events within the Sri Lankan community that you can go for. And yeah, it's there throughout Australia.
Right. So a question that we just received now in the chat function was, how would someone get about getting financial aid or getting a scholarship in Australia? Can you walk us through the process if you were able to receive any financial aid or scholarship?
So for international students, mostly the scholarships you get are at the point of applying to the university. So it's basically based on your results prior to applying. There is a wide range of scholarships, and if you go into their website, you can check them out. And most of the time, it's a bit difficult to get a scholarship after you are enrolled, because after that, it's mostly reserved to domestic students. But at the point of applying, there is a high chance to get scholarships if you have good results in your secondary education.
Right. So your secondary education is really a gateway, or the results you get at your A levels is really a gateway into receiving that scholarship. What are some of like the subjects, or like do they recognize both local A level and London A level results, or do you think it's more preferable for students to do London A levels when trying to get to Australia?
No, in Australia, they accept both of them. So
Right.
it doesn't matter whether you do locals or Londons.
Right. That I think that's really good to hear. So in terms of finances, how would a typical Australian student really look at finance? Like what would a budget look like when you're in Australia, specifically in Sydney? And I'm pretty sure the University of Sydney is in the middle of Sydney, and cost of living is considerably high compared to the other universities outside, or in like more inner or rural Australia. So what would a typical budget look like when you go to a university in a city?
So yeah, so Sydney has one of the highest cost of livings in the world. So things are pretty expensive. And the biggest expense, I would say, is for food and rent.
Right.
And the expenses are much lower if you make your own food at home and stuff. But other than that, for a typical week, I would say with rent, it's maybe somewhere around $100 to $150 per week for your food, Wi-Fi, and rent.
Okay, so that's a significant cost. Another question we just received was, do you need to have a job when you are there? Like, are there any restrictions the Australian government has put in terms of where you can work, where you can work, and the number of hours you can put in? So are there any restrictions like that which significantly curtail your ability to earn income?
For international students, there is a restriction of 20 hours per week, if I'm not mistaken. Either 20 hours per week or 20 hours per fortnight. But there is no restriction to what industry you can work, and you can work in any industry you want. But the hours restriction is not there during your holidays during the semester break. So you can
Okay.
work unlimited number of hours.
Right. So when are those semester breaks? Because I know that considering Australia is on the southern side of the world, like the climatic changes are very, very different. So when are those semester breaks?
The semester break would go from, the first one would go from June to about August, and the next one would be from December to February.
So if I'm not mistaken, that's for winter holidays and summer holidays, correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Right. We just got like another question in the chat, and that is, is this 20-hour work rule applying to jobs on campus? So if you want to be like a university clerk, or you want to, man the cafeteria, do those restrictions still apply to jobs on campus?
Yeah, they apply to any job that you work for.
Right. And when you do these jobs, what is the income look like? Because I know the minimum wage in Australia, I think in Victoria, is $20 per hour. So what does it look like in the Australia as a whole, and more specifically Sydney?
The minimum wage, if I'm not mistaken, here is about $20.50, something like that. So it does vary within some industries, and also according to your age, but in general, it's about $20 for an
Right.
industry.
Right.
Yeah.
So we just got another question. How do you how do you really keep your mental health in order, considering you said this is your second year in Australia? I'm pretty sure, and Sydney did have some substantial lockdowns as well. And considering global trends with more variants of COVID-19 appearing, how does a university student go to Australia and really keep in touch with his family and friends back home in Sri Lanka, and making new friends in Australia? So really, how do you manage all of that?
Right. So it's not easy because of the constant lockdowns and all, but the university also does offer you mental health support services, and you can go for them if you need to. But in general, I try to hang out with my friends on Zoom or Discord, because I only could go for university for my first semester, onto campus for about 4 weeks, and after that it's been constant online and offline learning.
Oh, right. Do you guys have any hybrid learning system where you have some classes online and some classes in person, considering Australia is somewhat getting better with COVID?
So for this semester, it has been fully online, but the previous semester was a hybrid model. It was most of the practical classes were on campus, but lectures were delivered online.
All right. Just a quick question, Janka, about the systems in Australia, because I know when someone goes to Australia, you expect there to really connect with your community, because considering there's a big population there as well. So what are the Australian people like? What are the domestic students like? Are they more willing to interact with you? Do they come with the regular are you Indian stereotype? What are the domestic students like?
Well, everyone is usually very friendly, and even when I interact with them in group projects, they are usually very helpful. And I haven't encountered any stereotypical comments from anyone so far.
Okay.
So yeah, but in general, everyone is very friendly.
All right. The next question is, if I'm not mistaken, the next question is, how do you access the systems in Australia? So how would you access healthcare? Does the university provide health insurance? How would you go about? I know Sydney has a very good public transport system. How would you go about, getting the various technologies or the cards you need in order to get around town? How do you access those things?
All right. So in terms of healthcare, you need to apply for a health insurance for the duration of your course. before you, at the point that you apply your visa. So you need to have health insurance before you go to Australia. And with that health insurance, all the basic health services are free for you. And the basic ones like going to your GP is very readily accessible. In terms of public transport, there is a tap on tap off card system. So after you purchase a card, you can top on the card with money for the trips you take, and that's how you pay for them.
Right. And my last and final question to you, Januka, is about engineering per se, specifically in Australia, because if I'm not mistaken, there aren't many mechatronic engineering job prospects in Sri Lanka. And I think it applies to a lot of fields as well, where a lot of the specialization of in particular industries or particular fields does not, those kind of job opportunities are not existent in Sri Lanka. So what are kind of the employment opportunities when it comes to things such as engineering or more or less the other fields as well? What is the best thing to get a job in Australia?
So for engineering, the jobs are there, but there are some restrictions when it comes to international students, because some places they ask for work rights or permanent residence when you apply for jobs. But the job opportunities are generally high if you move to rural areas of Australia and not in the metropolitan areas. But in the rural areas, there is a lot of employment opportunities for engineers and a lot of other professions as well.
Right. We just got a couple of questions in the chat. Do you think it's worth doing maybe 1 or 2 years in Sri Lanka? So I think what they're asking is it better to do maybe your first year or second year of like a foundation degree in Sri Lanka and then complete your degree abroad? Or do you think it's better to just go to that country and do it, the full course?
That is up to you, because the first year is basically where you learn your basic math courses and programming courses. So I think if someone wants to, they could easily do that part in Sri Lanka and then come for the more specialized courses to Australia. And there are a lot of people who do that. And the recognition of your degree at the end is pretty much the same.
Right. And my final question to you, Januka, and we're getting these questions quite often. It's a recurring question. How did you, so after you get your university application, or when you get your university acceptance letter, how do you go about through the immigration process? And by extension, how would you get permanent residency or citizenship in Australia?
For your student visa, I applied through one of the overseas education agents. Okay. And they handled all of my documents. And before you apply for your visa, you need a confirmed offer from your university. So with that offer letter, you can apply for your visa and get the health insurance. And that entire process would take around 1 to 2 months. And for your permanent residence, you would need a confirmed job, like a letter from your employer to apply for your permanent residence. And citizenship is, it takes a bit longer. You need to stay and you need to work and stay in the country for about 5 years to apply for citizenship.
All right. Thank you very much, Januka, for your time. I know it must be very late in Australia. I just got a message saying that it's around 10 o'clock there. So thank you very, very much for carving out some time in your schedule for us. Thank you very much, Januka.
Right. Thank you for letting me speak today.
Right. So that concludes our first speaker for the evening. Just a reminder to everyone in the audience today, please feel free to drop any questions in the chat. And depending on the time, I will pose these questions to our speakers. With that being said, our second speaker for the evening is Mr. Ashane Francis, who was, of course, the former head prefect of St. Thomas's College, Mount Lavinia. He captained many sports, including water polo. He is currently in Japan, and he has just finished his degree in business administration. Welcome, Ashin, to our discussion today.
Thank you, Nevan. Thank you for having me.
Right. So let's just get the generic first question out of the way then. Just tell us a little bit about yourself. What's Japan like?
First and foremost, a big thank you to Interact Club of St. Thomas's and Royal Institute for having me here. It's a pleasure seeing many people, seeing many young students trying to pursue an education abroad or in Japan. About me, of course, I graduated St. Thomas's in 2017. Like you said, I was the head prefect. I played for Sri Lanka water polo, captain water polo, diving, and swimming, vice captain of swimming. And then after graduating high school, I came to Japan on an academic scholarship to Ritsumaikan Asia Pacific University. 4 years down the line, I completed my degree 2 months ago, and now I'm currently working in Tokyo.
Brilliant. So you just mentioned that you were able to get a scholarship into Japan, into a Japanese university. I know that APU is known to be one of the best in Japan. So how would one really go about getting a scholarship into a prestigious university like APU?
Academics, short and sweet. You need to have good academic standards. That just does not mean that you have good A-level results or O-level results. I think it's a constant effort. So your credentials prior to your A-levels, for example, your term examinations are of utmost important. Especially in Japan, they do not look at your final result. Moreover, they look on a constant basis. So for anyone who's willing to come to Japan, I feel like you don't have to be extremely smart. It's just ensure that you maintain an average good enough for you to get in. Other than academics, I feel like you also need to do your extracurricular activities, leadership programs, sports, extracurricular activities like clubs like yours, and also language ability. If you speak Japanese, it's definitely a plus, but you need to have good IELTS score in order to get a good scholarship to Japan.
Right. So you just mentioned that you need to be able to speak Japanese. That it would be a plus point to speak Japanese. Are there any like maybe online courses or maybe like an institute in Sri Lanka that could really help someone speak Japanese? Or do you think it's best to come to Japan and learn in Japan as you go?
I think it's best if you do come to Japan and learn Japanese. One reason is because the culture surrounding Japan is predominantly Japanese. Japan doesn't use a lot of English. I would say it's about 5%. So you immerse yourself into a culture where you're forced to speak the language. Like it or not, you interact with people day to day, and eventually you pick it up. In terms of like an institute or anything in particular, I recommend Sasakawa University, Sasakawa Institute. I think it's in Kolpiti. But more than that, I think individually, if you can watch anime, that really helps you understand about the culture. Personally, I did not like watch anime or anything. So as soon as I came to Japan, I had no choice but to learn. So I think it also depends on the person. You can obviously prepare yourself before, but I would also suggest it's best if you come to Japan and then immerse yourself in the culture.
Right. So Ashin, a question that has been like pondering, like when we were discussing the questions to put to you, was Japan is very known for its discipline and that its education system forces its students to become more disciplined and to really make sure their work is neat and in order. So and in the Sri Lankan system, it doesn't push students as far to be as disciplined as the Japanese system does. So what could be some tips to really adapt to the Japanese education system?
I think it's not very difficult in terms of when you say like discipline. It's just individually, if you're ambitious and if you're like you know that you work towards a goal. That's the whole Japanese culture. They do their stuff and they make sure that they prepare for it. So in terms of like preparing mentally, I don't think anything. You just need to be a wholesome person, know what you're doing, and respect the culture. Because after all, Japan is a country, like you said, based out of respect. So you need to respect each other in order to be disciplined, and that's the core function. That's the core characteristic that exists within their society. So I think if you're a respectable and if you're a culturally sound person, Japan would be a great fit.
Right. You just spoke about there are some certain cultural differences that exist. Recently, there has been in the news of a Sri Lankan immigrant worker who was killed, or rather was unfortunately passed away in a Japanese detention center. So the question that I'm asking is there certain hostility towards immigrants, students? Because I know that there's been somewhat of a resurgence of far-right nationalism in Japan. So is there any hostility towards immigrants in Japan?
Honestly, I feel like it depends on where you live in Japan. Where I lived was a very culturally sound, very uni-friendly environment.
Mm.
And I think one of the reasons why the office or the law had to take action against that lady was because she overstayed her visa. Obviously, it was unethical of them, but then again, Japan is a country based on law. So if you overstay your visa or if you do something illegal, then you're actually bound to get, face the law. But in terms of hostility or like, looking down on people, honestly, I haven't faced anything as of yet. Maybe because I speak the language with them, I have lots of Japanese friends.
Mm.
But my friends and other people don't really like, it's not like, we face racism or anything. It's a very,
Mm.
like I said before, it's a country based out of respect. They don't speak a lot of English, which might be a bit, a bit bad at times. But then again, I think it's all right. There's nothing to complain as of that.
Right. The next question that I have for you, Ashen, is you said I actually watched a previous seminar that you did, and you talked about like the extracurriculars that you were engaged in Japan, that you worked in the Rugby World Cup as well. So just walk us through like the extracurricular activities and the various activities you can do in Japan, plus from your studies.
Yeah, I think Japan is a country where you can pursue your passions. For example, I was passionate about my sports and water polo and swimming in particular, and I was able to do it. There is a bunch of resources where you can reach out to. For example, if you're into drama or if you're into music or if you're in a choreography, anything. I think it's a country per se that's full of opportunities, because there's a lot of people living there. It's culturally sound. There was a big American influence in the country. So if you really want to do something, they don't really like constrain you. It's up to you to go out there and reach out to the people, and they're very welcoming. Especially if a foreigner wants to join their circle or if they want to be a part of the society, they are definitely welcoming, because for them they believe strongly of their Japanese presence. So when they get some influence from other people, they are very welcoming and they treat you like one of theirs. So I did a lot of extracurricular activities like the World Cup, sports and all. But in general, for anyone, if you want to pursue your extracurricular activities or your other passions, I think Japan is great.
Right. What about maybe how would you like really handle like your mental health in Japan? Because I know that Japan, comparatively to countries like Australia, the UK, and America, there isn't a big Sri Lankan population. So how do you really keep in touch with your friends and family back home? And how would you like maybe interact with your friends, like Japanese friends who you've never ever met before?
It's actually a really good question, because mental health is not something spoken very often in Japan. It's because the Japanese people, they have I'm sure most of you know, they are very workaholics. They have a very strong work culture from 8 a.m. to about 7 p.m. Not in every company, but most of the companies. So they are most likely to be introverts than extroverts. So they don't usually open up about mental health. But on the other side, in my university, there was a good support from the community, from the people that we know. Like you said before, there's not a lot of Sri Lankans compared like Australia or the UK. But then again, my university supported me in a way. If I had something, I could definitely reach out. There was the consulting office, the admissions office, and the international student office. So if you have problems, if you're struggling with anything, they're definitely there for you. But as you move on, as you step towards the more rural, the more, like if you're moving towards Tokyo, then you're more likely to, be introverted, not really talk about it. But as of a university student, I didn't have any problems, and there are enough and more resources that you can open up to.
Right. So one like clear cultural difference between Sri Lanka and Japan is the food. I know many Sri Lankans find it very, very hard to even like understand the concept of eating raw fish. So how do you really make that cultural adjustment?
Honestly speaking, I was with the same mindset. I came to Japan, raw fish, sushi, sashimi. I was like, no, I'm never gonna eat that. But then as soon as you just spend about 2-3 months here, you eventually become one of them, because you cannot exist from that culture. It's there every day, every time you wake up, every time you use the train, or every time you come back home from uni. It's just around you, and eventually, more often than not, you eventually get used to it. It's not you're being forced, but you need to try it out. And honestly, coming to a country like Japan, where it's very rich in diversity and culture, there's so many things that you can learn from, even from their food, the way they prep their food for a specific meal. That really talks about why these people are, so motivated and encouraged. So I don't feel like it's a thing that you should be worried about, especially if you're coming to Japan. More often than that, I feel like you should come with an open mind to challenge yourself, explore new opportunities. Then you'll be able to fit into the society.
Right. Since we're speaking on the topic of food, how much would food cost in Japan? Like, what would like a weekly budget really look like for a student who's just coming in to study?
Yeah, honestly speaking, Japan is a bit on the expensive side compared to Sri Lanka. For example, if you go to like McDonald's, for a day, at least your meal will cost 1,000 yen. That is about 2,000 Sri Lankan rupees. But on the other side, there is also the option of cooking. The dormitories are big enough, you have enough and more space. So you have the option of, buying some groceries and then cooking on your own. There is a lot of South Asian restaurants. So if you're worried about getting spices, there's nothing to worry about. Honestly, when I came, actually, I was really into sports, so I couldn't really eat outside every day because it was not good for my health. And then I eventually started cooking, started eating clean, started getting fresh vegetables and fruits. So weekly budget, I would say, you can average about good 4,000, 5,000 yen. But then again, there's something called part-time work. You're allowed to work 28 hours for a week in Japan, and usually the pay for 1 hour is about 900 to 1,000 yen. So you can eventually cover up for your expenses and save up money, if you want to do that as well.
Right. So we got a bunch of questions in the chat. The one is, considering that Japan is the third largest economy in the world, what are the job opportunities and what do the job opportunities really look like, and how much money would an immigrant really look to make in Japan?
Yeah, job opportunities, like you said, is the third largest economy in the world. You take the big Fortune 500s, the Morgan Stanleys, the Goldman Sachs, the Bloombergs, the Hondas, the Toyotas, everything is in Japan. And when you say immigrant, Nevan, it's not immigrant per se, but when you're working in Japan, you get the engineer's visa or like special service visa. So you get the same benefits as the Japanese people. You get the same pension benefits or remuneration benefits. Sometimes you even get higher. My company is located in Maryland, USA. It's one of the biggest HR consulting firms, so I get a good salary. But then again, post graduation, I feel like Japan is, like I said before, is a country full of opportunities. It's not like the US, where it's very hard to convert your immigration status from student to worker or an employee. But in Japan, they're very transparent. The company sponsors you, your university supports you. As long as you have fulfilled those requirements, there's a ton of opportunities to work in Japan.
Right. So we just got another question in the chat as well about, can you just walk us through, after you get your acceptance letter into a university, how do you really go through the immigration process, and how would you convert a student visa to a work visa and then eventually to permanent residency and citizenship?
In terms of getting the acceptance, I think once you do get the acceptance offer from the university, your university guides you. There's something called CEO, it's called Certificate of Eligibility. That allows you to go to the Japanese embassy and apply directly. So you do not have to go through a third party. You support the necessary documents, the bank documents, the CEOE, and then you can go and apply. I think it takes about 1 month or 3 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. and then your process is smoother. After you come to Japan, usually student visa, your college is for 4 years. You study here for 2 years, and then you can extend it also for another for the rest of the 2 years. And for all of that, the university supports you. After 4 years, if you do land a job, if you get a confirmation from a company, then the company sponsors you as in they give you a letter stating that, hey, X and Y is being sponsored by our company. Please support us with the visa documents. And then along with your graduation letter, you go to the immigration office, and then, yeah, you have the working visa as well.
Right. We just got another question in the chat as well. So you talked about, like, there are a lot of people who aren't into anime and who aren't into Japanese culture per se. So can you recommend any, like, maybe TV shows or any books or some kind of like internet resource that maybe that could allow individuals to familiarize themselves with Japanese culture?
I think it's not a cultural problem per se, because it's somewhat similar to Sri Lanka as well. I think people in Japan and Sri Lanka are very humble. They're very open when it comes to like talking to people. So not necessarily any student or any individual that wants to come to Japan needs to prepare himself mentally. I think it's just that you need to have that mindset of being open. You need to be able to face challenges. Japan is a country where you will face a lot of challenges, especially the language barrier. You'll find it hard. But then I think just looking up the internet, there's lots of TV shows on Netflix. You can watch that. Just speaking out to resources. For example, you can watch documentaries about the Olympic because it just concluded. So I think little stuff like that you can do, and then get an idea about the Japanese culture.
Right. You spoke about in your previous questions about the help that the university offers you, and you specifically spoke about the International Student Office. What kind of support systems would the university really give you? And what specifically does the International Student Office really offer for people who are coming in, who may find it difficult to culturally adjust or who may not fit in to their specific roles?
So what they do is International Student Office, they have created something called sub-communities. So within my university, we have a sub-community of the Sri Lankan community. So we have about a certain number of people that gather, once a month. We discuss about certain events. We have cultural events. We go out for dinner. So that surrounding family concept is always there. So we don't have to really worry about that. And also something I should emphasize is that after you come to Japan, the International Student Office, there are external scholarships. I got a lot of external scholarships on financial support, which I was able to put into my research. I was able to go to Austria on student exchange. So Japan is a country where they support you. They support you financially, they support you mentally, and you just need to be driven, and you just need to be, strong enough to go and grab that opportunities.
Right. So we just got a couple of more questions in the chat. So are there any issues that you feel that you can bear in Japan, but you may feel that they could be deal breakers for others hoping to migrate to Japan?
I won't say you should come with the intention of migrating to Japan per se. You should come with your primary focus should be to get quality education. You should come here with open hands. You should be smarter than what you were 4 years ago, and eventually developing as a person. I was not the same person that I was 4 years ago. I've had lots of ups and downs. I've learned from my colleagues, learned from my professors, but I think it's not something which is holding you back. It's just that you need to be a person who's passionate, open about what you want to do. And then again, there are obviously challenges. It's not like you speak English. Sometimes you might get frustrated because they don't understand what you're saying. But then again, that's the whole part of life. You need to challenge yourself, understand what's different from Sri Lanka, and then if you're able to do so, I feel like you'll be able to be successful in Japan.
Right. And my final question to you, Ashen, is this question in the chat. If you are a straight A student, what is the probability of you really getting a scholarship into Japan?
If you're a straight A student, I would say your score about 75% or 80% chance. More of, I don't want to say 100 because it's like, it'll be too straightforward. But then again, you just don't want to be a straight A student. That's the point I want to get across. You need to be a balanced person. You need to have extracurricular activities, like I said before, leadership qualities and language abilities. Because honestly, you can't be a bookworm and come and survive in Japan. You need to be able to adapt into the culture, adapt into the time differences, strictly their discipline. It's good if you're a straight A student. There are lots of opportunities, but also try and work on the other stuff which will help you and give you that extra advantage to get into a top university in Japan.
Right. Thank you very much, Ashin, for your time. I know it must be very late in Japan. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Nevan, and thank you everyone for having me.
Uh, so that concludes our second speaker for the evening. Just a kind reminder to everyone in the audience to please feel free to drop in any questions that you may have regarding the specific countries that you want to go to, or specific academic qualification you're looking for in another country. With that being said, we will be moving on to our third speaker for the evening, and this is Mr. Shakya Udugama, who's a former student at St. Thomas's College, Mount Lavinia, and is currently studied in Germany. He has completed his professional qualifications in Germany. A very good morning to you, I would say, in Germany, to Mr. Udugama.
Hi, Evan. I hope you can see me.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Loud and clear.
cool.
Loud and clear.
Yep.
So
it's in the afternoon, but yeah,
nice.
nice to be on the call. Thanks for the invitation.
Right. So let's just talk about, if you could just maybe give us a rounded out image of yourself. What have you done in Germany? What do you think? How has Germany really been to you?
Yeah, okay. So I think the best way to start is how I got to Germany in the first place, because I mean, a lot of people wouldn't consider Germany to be the first option to go to, but I got the opportunities through college. In grade 11, we had this exchange program where 5 or 6 students from our school, they do like a 1-month exchange program with a school in Germany, in Hanover, actually, especially. And I got the opportunity to take part in 2013 with 5 other guys from our batch. And we got the opportunity to experience, the culture, how the people are around our age. And when we got to their school, first thing we realized was we are kind of, how do you put it? In a way, we are behind in our educational system compared to theirs, because it was much more advanced. But we got to experience the culture, and we had one day where we visited this head office of an insurance company in Hanover, and it was called the Sri Lanka Day, right? So we were taken into this company and we were given an introduction, like a whole tour of the company, and we got to know the head of HR recruiting for traineeships there. And this guy was like, oh, if you guys are interested, you can do like an internship at this company after you finish your A-levels. And we were all interested at that point, but the only one to follow up after coming back to Sri Lanka was me, because I thought, okay, it's a cool opportunity straight after A-levels to go there. And I stayed in contact with the guy, and he said, you know what, okay, why don't you come over in, I think he said, it was, so A-levels was in August, and yeah, straight away, mid-August, I had to go straight after my exam. And I got the opportunity to do 1 month with them. And a department that I worked at, they actually extended my internship for another 1 month. And that period, I got to know more people. And then I got to know this system they have in Germany. It's, I don't think we have anything similar in Sri Lanka or in any other country, as far as I know, because it's basically a professional qualification, but you go to like a vocational school. Like in Sri Lanka, you would consider vocational schools, not that high class, but here the vocational school structure is made in such a way, if you don't want to do A-levels, you go to a vocational school, and it's kind of like your A-level that you do. And I asked if I could join, and they said, yeah, why don't you apply and check? But the only problem or challenge would be is that it's going to be in German. And I didn't know a word in German, but I said, okay, let's see, challenge accepted. Came back to Sri Lanka after my internship. That was in 2015. Did a crash course at the German Institute to learn a bit of German. I did about, I think, 4.5, 5 months of German language. But to be honest, what you learn like in Sri Lanka outside of Germany, it's basically almost nothing. And I was waiting for my application to come through. No answer from HR, nothing. So I thought, okay, you know what, maybe this is not going to happen. So I started working in Sri Lanka. I started working at a HSBC. And about, I think, 9-10 months later, I got a reply asking whether I want to start in 2017 or 18. So I said, you know, why wait till 2018? Straight away, I took the opportunity and I flew to Germany on the 8th of June 2017. So I've been here ever since. So that's kind of the whole background to why Germany and how this happened.
Right. You spoke about you just mentioned that there is a difference in the education systems, in the education style. Can you just walk us through some of those differences and how would someone adapt to those differences?
Yeah, so I think the biggest flaw that I saw in our system is, you know, we keep our education very broad up to like A levels, right? Like the last 3 years are only the point where you can, you know, really focus on commerce, science, maths, or whatever, right? At like the German level, they kind of decide this around grade 10, and they, you know, they help the students to get to the point where they see, okay, if I want to become a scientist, these students would have only 4 subjects for their O levels, but they don't have O levels yet, straight away like A levels, and they focus on that. And there are 3 tiers of schools in Germany. So you have this thing called I don't know the English translation, but it's a Realschule and a Gymnasium. So Gymnasium is kind of like the high tier, fast-paced school. The Realschule is like more for the slower kids. You learn the same subjects, but at different speeds. So if you go to a gymnasium, you have a better opportunity to get like to the top universities in Germany or anywhere in the world, because the pace is much faster and the way you are taught is completely different. Like you have a lot of practical stuff. If you do science specifically, like you spend half of your time in the lab and the rest is just on the books.
Right. What are some of the cultural differences in Germany? Because I know they have a very good beer culture in Germany. So what are those differences in that is the differences between the Sri Lankan and German culture? How would like a Sri Lankan student who is very, very, let's say, closed in terms of only being immersed in a Sri Lankan culture, would they find it incredibly hard into moving into Germany?
I would say close to impossible. Because you see, Germany is a country that's very proud of their own culture and the language and stuff like that. So if you try to, you know, take home with you and try to be like a Sri Lankan in Germany in the normal Sri Lankan sense, it's not going to work. You're not going to make a lot of friends. You're not going to survive long in society. But what I can say is like there are a lot of cultural differences when it comes to like, you know, punctuality, right? Sri Lankans, for us, 5 minutes can be dragged on for about half an hour. Say if you say I'll be there in 5 minutes, normally that means about a half an hour. But in Germany, if you say 5 minutes, it means 4 minutes and 59 seconds, right? So if you go to school late, right? Let's say a minute or two, the door is already closed, so you get written up. And like I'm not even joking when I say 1 or 2 minutes. It's crazy, because for me, okay, 2 minutes is like, you know, you're early. Very spontaneous, you know, we're happy-go-lucky kind of thing. You know, we never plan ahead. That's the way we live life in Sri Lanka, because it works in Sri Lanka. You would never plan to catch a bus because the bus comes when the bus comes, right? You have to just be there. But in Germany, everything is planned. Like you won't believe people our age, right? Between, let's say, 16 to 30, they have like a personal calendar, what they like, they plan everything. If they're meeting up with friends, they plan what time, what they're gonna do, and like they block it in their calendar. So you can't like spontaneously do things with your friends here. If you're like,
Right.
hey, what are you doing tomorrow? And they're like, yeah, I'm sorry, I can't. And then you're like, when would you have time to do something? They're like, maybe 2 weeks from now. And I'm like, seriously, what? That doesn't make sense. But those are like the biggest difference you need to get adjust to. But if you expect them to be like Sri Lankans and like say, okay, let's meet up tomorrow, it's not gonna happen.
Right. As far as I know, there aren't many Sri Lankans in Germany. So how would you go about really interacting with the German people? Are they friendly? Are they hostile? What are they like?
Okay, so I would never use the word hostile for any country, but the initial impression I had of Germans were, the people you see in movies, very strict. They don't joke, they don't have fun, but it's completely wrong. Like German people are like us. They love to laugh, they love to joke around, they love to, mess around, but within a certain structure. They don't go overboard. Regarding the Sri Lankans, I mean, we do have a big Tamil population in Germany. These are the people who left during the wartime. So a lot of refugees were taken in Berlin, Hamburg, and I think Munich has a lot. But where I am, I think we have about maybe 50 Sri Lankans in total. But my recommendation is, if you ever go to a foreign country, never meet with another Sri Lankan. Don't ever do that, because you can't integrate that way. And that I purposefully did that because I know there are some other guys from our college actually in Germany, and I made sure that I don't meet up with them and hang out with them, because if you want to integrate yourself into the German culture, you need to learn the language, right? Without the language, you're gonna get so far, but after that, it's not gonna work out. So the best way to learn the language is to immerse yourself in the German culture and stay as far as possible from your own culture as possible. So that's what I would definitely say.
Right. On this point, you spoke about like Germany accepting refugees. I think in 2015, Angela Merkel made the decision to accept about 1 million Syrian refugees and all across the globe. And there was a resurgence of far-right nationalism in Germany. There was subsequent attacks in Munich and Cologne. As an immigrant in Germany, do you face discrimination? Do you face hostility from, let's say, the AFD, for example?
I wouldn't know the party exactly, but obviously I have experiences with a few weirdos. You always get these extremists, right? The first time I experienced them, I was fresh in Germany. That was 2017. We had some company function where the trainees were taken out for dinner and whatever. And I was heading home. I think it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and I got into the tram. And this old dude, like, he just like looked at me and shouted at me, saying like, "Why are you trying to speak German? German is for German people." And then he was like, like really aggressive.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to do, because this guy was like in his 80s. And like, if he hit me and I hit him back and he died, I would have gone to jail, right? So I was like, what do I do? Do I just get hammered? And he actually made the tram driver stop the tram because he wanted to get out of it. And the tram driver said, "Oh, you know what?" And he just stopped in the middle of like nowhere, and he told the guy to get out. So like, that was very clear to me that you get these few people who are like just off, but the majority of people. And there was this guy next to me. I think he was in his like 40s. He told me to sit next to him, and he was like, "Don't take this seriously. These guys are crazy, and these are like leftovers of the Second World War and stuff like that." So I wouldn't worry too much about it, but you do feel the looks sometimes, because you're the minority, right? In Sri Lanka, you're the majority. So like, the looks we give foreigners, they give you back, and it's a weird to see the other side of the coin. But it's nothing bad. It's all okay.
Right. So we got a couple of questions for you in the chat. So the first one is, wait, hold on a second. So the first one is, like, what would a typical budget be for a person freshly in Germany? What would a budget look like? And by extension of which, Like, are there any, what are kind of the jobs that you can do? Are there certain restrictions the German government has imposed in terms of working hours or the industry that you could work in? Just walk us through that process.
Okay, let's start with the budget. So budget is based on where you want to live, right? Germany is a very regional country. So the region I am in, I think with the average salary of about 800 euros, you can live in your own like apartment. You can pay all your bills, you can eat, and you can still have a little bit of money left over for travel, right? So Germany is actually really good based on the region you go as an immigrant. They calculate like a certain amount of money that you should have to live comfortably, because as an immigrant you don't get any support from the government in terms of like if you lose your job they won't pay you money, right? So first thing is, if you know, okay, you're going to, let's say, Bayern, that's southern Germany, that's very expensive. Like Munich is crazy expensive. You would maybe get like a single room small flat and you would still pay like 1,200 euros. That's way much, that's way higher than what you would earn as a like a newbie in the country. But after you decide that, the other topic is jobs, which would be like you can do anything basically, except if you're going into, let's say, if you're an artist, or if you're a photographer, or you do videography and stuff like that, that falls into the freelance category. So unless you work at a company and you have a strict contract, you're okay. But if you want to do it freelance, then you need to show them like a valid like a professional license kind of thing. So you need to show them that you can actually make a living out of this. Just because you made a few cool videos in school, you can't expect to go there and win big clients and make like over 3,000, 4,000 euros a month, because you need to show them that you can survive with your skills. But best industries that I would recommend are the service industries. So like insurance, banking, marketing, and well, if you are smart enough, like the scientific fields, like companies like Siemens, BMW, Volkswagen, they hire so many engineers, like it's crazy. So there's a huge market for that, especially because Germany has a deficit of young people. So there are so many opportunities. Like there are more older people than younger people. So they're waiting for people to come in to fill in these gaps in the market, because I think in 3 years we're going to be paying higher taxes because the pensions are going to be higher. So they want to minimize this.
Right. So we've got lots more questions in the chat.
Okay, cool.
The next question is like, what are the kinds of job opportunities available? So I think you already spoke about that. The question is, how would one set themselves up? So like, can you just walk into a Deutsche Bank and open an account? Like, how would you like really set yourself up when you go to Germany?
Oh, okay. So it's so complicated, especially if you're trying to do it alone without any agency or something. It's really, really difficult because all the documents are in German. And trust me when I say that the German words are so complicated and so long, you can't even like put it into Google Translate, because some words Google can't even translate properly because it's like a long word. It is easy. Like to open up a bank account, you just need to go to the bank with a valid visa, passport, and €1, right? So if you put in €1, they open up a bank account. Difference is if you're under 25, you're totally fine, because you get this kind of like a setback from the government where you can open up free accounts. But if you're over 25, you need to pay the bank to keep your money, because Germany has a 1% inflation rate. So it's under the EU standard, which EU says every country should have a minimum of 2% inflation rate. Germany has 1% inflation rate. So which means the economy is really stable, but you don't get any interest. So basically, if you put your money into the bank, you're losing money just keeping the money in the bank, and the banks don't want that because they have to pay higher taxes. So you need to pay the bank to keep the money. The other thing about like German living is you have these private things you can do, like bank account, like a little travel card to use the tram, the train, the bus, and all that you can do privately. But the visa stuff, that's really complicated because you need to go to like 7 different offices to get signatures, and the documents have some completely different names, and it's really difficult to do it on your own if you don't know anybody who can help you. But there are so many places, like I think EuroAsia is a company in Sri Lanka that help you do the whole visa process, and they support you with the embassy stuff in Sri Lanka as well. So I would definitely recommend going through like an agency like that, because they will handle everything, and you won't have problems where you haven't handed in a document and it's too late and you get stuck somewhere, right? So I would definitely recommend doing that if you don't know anybody in Germany.
Right. Yes. So what are there any like culturally significant events that the German people really appreciate that we may not know about?
Yeah, we always thought Oktoberfest was the German festival, right? But I was quite amazed because Hanover doesn't celebrate it. It's a Southern tradition. And I was kind of, I was like, okay, come on. I was expecting, some, Oktoberfest music and, the whole costume and everything. No, they don't do it in Hanover. They have this celebration for Father's Day, which I was amazed, because Germany is a country that, follows the rules to the letter, right? But one day of the year, it's like the purge, where they don't care about these rules. The rules are just, on paper, and the whole city is out drinking and partying, the whole city, like it's a holiday. And it's weird, because it's kind of a shock, where you see, like, the day before you saw the people, like, walking in straight lines, everything is clean, no noise, nothing. And the next day it's like chaos. So Father's Day is a celebration they have here in like the northern part of Germany. And other big celebrations, Easter is a big celebration. Germans celebrate Easter in a big way. Their Christmas celebration is a bit different to ours, because on the 21st, they actually exchange gifts. And the 24th and the 25th, they normally meet up with family and stuff. So it's a bit different to our system. Religious celebrations, Germany is mainly a Christian driven country, but more and more it's a more neutral country. So you can celebrate whatever you want. Nobody actually cares. And you don't get holidays for like all different religions. It's only the Christian holidays you get, the rest you don't.
Right. My last and final question to you is, what would is the food I know is very different to Sri Lankan food. So like, how is it hard to adjust to those kinds of things?
If you love meat, like pork, beef, chicken, if you're a meat lover, Germany is heaven for you, because no matter where you go, it's so cheap. Like for like €2 or basically 500 rupees, you can fill your stomach up with like good lamb or whatever, right? So if you're a meat lover, it's heaven. If you're a spice lover, it's not that easy, because the food is very bland, and the spiciest thing you would get is with a bit of pepper. And if you want extra, they give you like jalapenos to it, but it's not the same spice as we experience in Sri Lanka. So it's okay. I mean, the food is good, but there are times when you get homesick and you really want some Sri Lankan food. Depending on where you are, you might or might not have a restaurant that has Sri Lankan food. So I don't have. In Hanover, we don't have any Sri Lankan restaurants. The closest we can get is like a Southern Indian restaurant, but that's it. But if you go to Hamburg or Berlin, you have enough Sri Lankan restaurants and you can enjoy. But yeah, I would say take your spices with you so you can cook your stuff in Germany. You get everything else here, so just take the spices, because that's really expensive here. Like you can't buy normal spices here for the normal price. But yeah, I think food-wise, anybody can survive. If you're a vegan, Germany is moving towards that whole trend. But if you're a meat lover, it's heaven.
Right. Thank you very much, Shakir, for your time. Like, I know it's Sunday afternoon in Germany, but thank you very much for cutting off
Thanks
some
for
of your
having
time
me,
to speak with us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Right. Another message to all members of the audience, please feel free to drop any questions in the chat so I can ask the speakers any of the queries. There may be some questions that you all may put to us that I may not be able to get through. That is maybe because like, there are lots of questions and I may not be able to get to them, or the speaker would have answered it when he was answering another question. So please forgive me if I miss your questions. With that being said, our fourth and final speaker for Project Recon 360 is Mr. Abhishek Ramuk Potter. He is a former student of St. Thomas's College, Mount Lavinia. He was a college prefect. He was also the president of the Intra Club in 2017. He captained squash. He was the sergeant or a sergeant for cadeting as well. And in 2018, he made the trip to Singapore and is currently pursuing a degree in science in economics. A very good evening to you, Abhishek.
Hi, thanks everyone, and thank you for all for actually having me today. It's a very great opportunity to share something with the younger generation as well.
Right. Thank you very much, Abhishek. So let's just get through the first question. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about Singapore.
Sure. Nevan, you actually gave a very good introduction to me, so thank you for that. So I actually graduated, or I rather left school in 2018. So because I was a college prefect, I had to stay for around 9 more months. But the good thing about Singapore is that the intake actually started in July the next year. So I did local A-levels actually. So when I did my local A-levels in August, my results came somewhere in Jan, and then the application period ended somewhere in April. So in a kind of way, it actually worked amazingly well for me. So everything was like a very good chain reaction. So in July 2018, I actually made my trip to Singapore.
Right. What made you choose Singapore? Because I know like many, like the heaven for Sri Lanka students is going to Australia or going to UK or going to America. Like what made you choose Singapore?
So I actually, I always wanted to go abroad for my higher education, but I really didn't have it planned out. So my options were, I was looking at Japan, I was looking at Australia, and I was looking at Singapore. I got many offers from Australia as well, but I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship at SMU, which is Singapore Management University. And in terms of like finances, ease of convenience, it's very close to Sri Lanka as well. And I always had a very good impression of Singapore being, the financial hub of Asia and all that. And given my field of study, economics, and right now I'm actually doing real estate econs, which is also a bit of finance as well. I thought Singapore would be the best available option that I have.
Right. So we've already had a couple of questions in the chat for you. So the first question is, like you said, you got opportunities and you were able to get some kind of financial aid. How would you go about getting that in Singapore?
Yep. To be honest, Nevan, it's actually you are eligible for some kind of financial aid or grant or bursary, I would say, given that you are an international student. Firstly, because what Singapore actually does is, I'm not sure whether they have the same system in other countries, but they actually have a price discrimination for what kind of student you are. So for example, if you're a local, you pay 1/4 of what an international student would pay. And if you're a PR, you pay 2/4 of what an international, or half of what an international student would pay. So like in terms of fees, the amount for an international student is actually very high. And given that a country like Sri Lanka is considered a low middle income country, if I can frame it like that, even if we have a very good life in Sri Lanka, when you compare it with Singapore, you actually you're like nowhere there. So we automatically fall into their criteria for bursaries and grants. So I actually benefited from that. And also on top of my scholarship, I also signed a grant with the Singapore government, where I agree after I graduate, I get to work for a Singaporean organization in Singapore or outside for 3 years. So you do get a lot of financial aid, I would say. You get loans, you get bursaries. So in terms of those options, there are plenty more.
Right. We got We got some more questions coming in. How would one like go about applying to a Singaporean university?
Sure. So, like I said, I got my results in around December end or Jan beginning. So good thing about Singapore is the application process is once a year, and it falls between your application process starts somewhere in December, goes on until April. So once you apply, you get to know you get your offer letter or not. And once you get your offer letter, they also let you know that you're eligible for the government grant. But the scholarships actually come a bit later because they need to individually interview you for those scholarships. So with your letter of acceptance, you do also get the option whether you are eligible or not for the grant. And then if you do accept the offer, you can then start applying for your visa process.
Right. Okay. You just mentioned in the previous question that Singapore is like, it's relatively rich. Its currency is very stable. Its economy is extremely developed. And like, I think Singapore is one of the most expensive cities to live in. So how would you cope with that, considering the expenses are incredibly high?
Yeah, Nevan. So I actually, there's a lot of student subsidiary rates that is given out by the government. So for example, like the public transportation system in Singapore, which is very, very effective. Given that it's a very small country, they actually discourage private transport. So their public transport is actually very, very organized. And like for students, you get student discounts for train rides, for bus rides, even at campus, your meals are subsidized and all that. And in terms of expenses, if I'm very honest with you, I think it's actually much less than what people actually anticipate. So even though like Singapore is one of the most expensive countries to live, in terms of groceries and all that, you can get a or rather you can satisfy your needs easily with not an expensive budget. But where the expenses actually come in is when it comes to your rental. But if you are close to the city, obviously you'll be paying a very, very large amount. But if you're living in the suburbs or closer to Malaysia or towards the corners of Singapore, your rent wouldn't be that high. So it all depends on how you actually manage yourself there.
Right. What would a typical budget look like in Singapore? Like how much would you pay for rent? How much would you pay for groceries? What would that look like?
Yeah. So if you're living outside the central region, you can expect around 400 for a room. Also, if you're not, because my uni is actually in the middle of the city, so my campus hostel is actually very expensive because it actually follows the city rental rates. But if you want to go to something like NUS or NTU, their dorm system is actually very good, very cheap. So the best alternative is to actually live in the hostel. But for kids that actually go to SMU, our best option would be to rent a public house, which is actually very fun, very effective as well. So if you're outside the city, rates can go around 400 for a room. But right now, I actually moved from suburbs because it's actually very easy to travel and all that. So now a typical room, if you want to have a room for yourself, would cost around $700 as compared to if you live outside the suburbs, which would be much lower.
Right. Another question that we just received was, what would a basic degree cost in Singapore in terms of just the tuition fees?
Again, it depends on what exactly your degree is. For example, if you're going into like a law degree, it would be very expensive, or it would be the most expensive degree. But if you're going for a Bachelor of Science in finance, in economics, medicine, or engineering, it would, for international students without any grants, without any subsidies, it would cost around 45,000 Sing dollars per year, which I would say would be around 7 million Sri Lankan rupees per year.
Right. Okay. So my next question is, I think this is very Singapore specific. So Singapore is especially Singaporean students are known to have a very like bad grind culture, and it's very, very competitive in the universities. So how would, and then in fact, I've heard that some Sri Lankan students have committed suicide, unfortunately, by studying in Singapore. So how do you really cope with that kind of grind culture, that level of competitiveness in Singapore?
Yeah, Nima, you're actually 100% right. People in Singapore are very, very, very hardworking. I think the reason for Singapore in general their success is because their people they actually put in crazy amounts of work. Like I know, so before I actually went abroad, the the idea the idea I had of uni is like uni is actually quite fun.
Okay.
But I've also experienced where some of my friends actually they come to uni at 8 o'clock in the morning and they leave around 10:30, 11 in the night, non-stop just studying. So you do get characters like that as well, which who actually don't care about work-life balance, nothing, just work, just hustling the whole day. But then again, you also get a fair amount of students who actually try to have some kind of work-life maintenance. And right now, actually, the Singapore government is also kind of promoting that work-life balance, or doing something other than working the whole day. Yeah, so that's something that's coming up as well.
Okay. We got another question. So on the line of dealing with that kind of grind culture, is how do you like maintain like your mental health in Singapore? Like how would you really keep in touch with your friends and family back in Sri Lanka, and how would you go about making new friends in Singapore?
Yeah, Neman. To be honest, making friends in Singapore is actually very easy because it's a very integrated environment. You get a lot of South Asians, especially Indians. You get a lot of Malaysians. You get a lot of Southeast Asians, Chinese. So it's a very integrated culture. And you also get a lot of Europeans and Americans coming for exchange as well. So in terms of like even other students, they do understand that, we are like the external party. So they try their best to actually get us involved. But like something that helped me a lot is one of my biggest passions here is actually playing rugby. So as soon as I came to SMU, I joined rugby. I joined private club as well. So when you have stuff in common, it's also very easy to find a good group of friends. And I think that was what actually helped me a lot, finding something in common.
Right. How about dealing with like your friends? How would you connect with your friends back home? Like how would you manage to keep in touch with Sebi and all of them?
So something that we also need to realize is that everyone's actually very busy. So you can't expect your friends to answer your calls on the first ring, or they can't expect you to answer whenever they want you to call and all that. But like in general, I try to call at least in group calls different sets of friends at least once in 2 weeks, once a month. You also get so much of social media platforms like Snapchat, Instagram, which really helps you connect with Sri Lankan friends and all that, or your childhood friends. So I wouldn't say it's a very difficult approach, but having said that, you do sometimes get upset or homesick when you see your family or your friends going on trips and all that. They're like they're actually having all the fun without me and all that. But you need to see like you being here is also you're doing yourself a favor. So it's about how you actually manage yourself.
Right. We just got another question in the chat. How do Singaporeans really react to like having Sri Lankans around?
Yep, Neman. To be honest, you don't get a lot of Sri Lankans in Singapore. So you don't get like Sri Lankans walking into uni together, or Sri Lankans hanging around together. If you do Sri Lankan, you'll normally see them hanging around with some of the Singaporeans or foreigners. And to what I've heard, hopefully what I've heard is actually correct. But we Sri Lankans are known to be very nice people. We're very down to earth, and we are very nice people. So there is already a very good impression of us when we actually go there. So that's something to help you around as well.
Right. with that being said, how would you really set yourself up in Singapore? Like do you need how would you like really go about opening a bank account? How would you go about getting those like discounts and subsidies from the Singaporean government? How would you really set yourself up in Singapore?
Yeah, no, actually, the very good thing about Singapore is it's actually everything is automated, or everything is digitalized. Also, it's their main language is actually English, or it's a very English speaking culture. So, like in terms of applying for a bank or anything, you do everything online. You just go, to their website, you fill out application form. Like 2 days later, they email you saying, okay, you got accepted. We please send us these details. And also, you're also eligible for foreign stuff a lot. So it's very, because it's all digitalized, I would say it's very easy. Those processes and all, everything can be done online.
Right. And a question that has come up in the chat is, what are the kind of jobs you could really look for in Singapore? Because I know Singapore is very much into the service industry. So what are like the jobs available in Singapore for someone who may want to go there for work?
Yeah, Naman, for foreigners, I would say it's a bit hard to get into the public service jobs. For example, if you want to work in the central bank or the monetary authority of Singapore, or even their armed forces, it's actually very hard. But given that Singapore is actually going through an aging population, similar to Germany, Japan, and all that, the government is actually motivated to encourage foreign talent to come into the country as well. And in terms of the specific sectors, I would say not only the service sector, even you get a lot of medical students here, given that the Singapore medical system is quite big. You get a lot of medical students studying here. You get a lot of engineers studying here. And like you said, you get a lot of service space, for example, working in finance, banking, investment related jobs. Those are also quite in demand in Singapore.
Right. With that being said, I know the Singaporean diet also has like spicy food. Has some similarity between our food and their food. Did you find it hard to like maybe make that adjustment to like maybe eating noodles more often, maybe eating like various types, a mix of Malaysian and Chinese and Indian food, like all that cultural mishmash in Singapore? Like how would you cope with that, like in terms of your diet?
I mean, generally, I would consider myself as a person who loves to explore all kinds of food. So I never said no for any kind of food, not any exotic food, but rather trying their local dishes. I was very I actually looked very forward for it. So my normal diet is like, for breakfast I have like cereals, which is very similar to Sri Lanka as well.
Right.
But like for lunch, I mainly, I mean, it's expected for any uni student. You'll mainly have your lunch outside because you're mainly at the campus during that time.
Right.
But the good thing is you can actually choose. You get Japanese food, you get Subway, you get fast food, you get Western food. So even all these food courts in Singapore actually have all these kinds of different foods. Also, you can't say that one thing is actually expensive from another, because everything is actually in like the same range. So you do get a lot of available options if you even want to have healthy diet or have some junk. There's so much of available options in Singapore.
Right. And my final question for you, Abhishek, before I let you go, because I know it's getting a bit late in Singapore. Is there any like organization that really helps students in Singapore? Is there an international students office that really helps international students coming in? Similar organization?
Yes, Devan, you do get like the International Students Association, you get cultural clubs and all that. But in general, the government and also like public organizations are very helpful for foreigners. Like if you go to the police, if you lost something and if you go to the police, they'll give you the same respect they would give for a local. There would be no kind of a formal discrimination in that sense, where just because you're a foreigner, they'll discriminate you, or you'll be less prioritized or anything. So like in terms of any kind of service that you need, and any inconvenience that you would face, it's if you just reach out to the correct organization, there'll be plenty of people to help you around, and there's a very high probability that you'll actually get your solution that you were looking for.
Right. Is there any way a prospective student, so let's say a student who's gotten an acceptance letter into, let's say, NUS or university you're at, like, is there any way, like, is there like, are there like websites or Facebook groups they could maybe join or really reach out to get support as soon as they get there?
Yeah, Nema, something different in Singapore unis is like you directly apply to the university itself. So unlike many other countries that actually you go through an agent,
Right.
I haven't heard of a lot of students who actually go through these travel agencies or the student agencies, where you rather directly apply with the uni itself, and as soon as you get in, they'll send you a list of groups, websites, Facebook pages, maybe Instagram pages, that is some kind of somewhat related to what you're doing. Like for example, when I came in, they send me all the sports kind of stuff, and some groups related to my study. So all those actually sent you even before you start your journey of studying.
Right. Thank you very much, Abhishek, for your time. I didn't want to keep you for too long, considering that it's getting a bit late there. So thank you very much, Abhishek, for your time. And it's been lovely talking to you.
Thanks, Evan. Yeah, very nice catching up with you. And I thank everyone for having me. And in case anyone actually wants to reach out, please reach out to me. I hope that I can, give some kind of good advice to you, so that it will help you in your decision making as well.
Right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, Abhishek. So that concludes Recon 360. We thank everyone who was able to come today, but also thank everyone who was present for these discussions yesterday as well. It's been a pleasure having all of you all here, and just maybe you all will be able to find some information or find some information regarding your future higher education. Thank you very much. Good evening.